All right, folks, warm welcome to this live webinar on mediation arbitration marketing. I'm very excited to be speaking to you today. And again, thanks very much for signing up and dialing in to participate live. I know that you all are busy and you have better things to do. Some of you probably should be sleeping, but you're listening to me. So again, thanks for that. So we're going to do a deep dive here in mediation arbitration marketing in today's webinar. We'll spend about 45 minutes with my presentation, and then we'll have, I think, about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. You are all centrally muted, so you can put any questions in the comment section throughout the presentation. And you can also ask them at the end. You can even ask them live by raising your hand or commenting, and I can unmute you. So I look forward to seeing what questions you may have. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name's Dan Mortimer. I'm the founder of Performance Laws. I spent about 20 years developing the system, working with the system and developing it that we use today for our clients. We've worked exclusively with mediators and arbitrators for a good number of years. Today, we cover some other client types as well, but mediation, arbitration, dispute resolution, that's our bread and butter. So if you're keen on learning more about our philosophy and our system, our approach, then I would direct you to some of the previous webinars that we've done. You can find the recordings in our free community, and I'll direct you to that free community once we get to the end of the presentation here today. I do advise you to stay through the duration of the presentation because there's going to be content that really covers everything from those of you who are just starting out to those of you who have been actively mediating and arbitrating for 15, 20 years. And many of our clients are in that position. So I think that's pretty much it by way of background. Now, naturally, we will be covering the case study that I mentioned from 300,000 to 700,000. We're going to cover some other client use cases as well. And the bulk of our presentation today will be focused on some of the most common questions that are asked around business development and marketing in this space. There are many mistakes made, which is why we're doing this, because I want to make sure that you guys succeed and you do it well and that you do it as quickly as possible. So I think that's it by way of background. And I'm taking a little look here at my emails as I speak to make sure that I let everybody in. So let's get started. Now, you're obviously going to be able to make up your own mind whether you want to listen to me or not. But if you want to hear it from me, here's 4 reasons for why I think you should pay attention today. The first point is current. The techniques and the advice that we'll go through here today are all techniques that our clients use today with success. And very often mediation and arbitration marketing advice is quite dated. So that's why I'm stressing that current part. The second point is proven. So our clients are getting tangible results today. And by tangible, I mean more cases, more referrals, more clients. That's ultimately what a lot of you are striving for. And sometimes you will, I don't know exactly what happened there, but hopefully that will go away. Sometimes you will work with marketing professionals, and we follow the advice of marketing professionals that may be helpful. But you always need to have expectations aligned so that you don't get disappointed with the outcome. Because very often what you'll see is that you'll end up with more LinkedIn connections, you'll end up with more LinkedIn views on your posts, or maybe more website views. None of that is bad. In fact, it's helpful. But those are really direct drivers for business. So you want to make sure that if you follow some advice, that advice has demonstrated to provide tangible outcomes. Point 3, effective. So our clients can minimize the time and effort spent to drive positive results if they follow this system. So they won't have to waste time, money, and energy on activities that don't matter. And finally, relevant. Our clients are mediators and arbitrators, and this might seem an obvious thing to say, but it's not that obvious, because often when you come across marketing experts, coaches, consultants, they may have a track record, but that track record may not come from the dispute resolution space. And there is a difference between someone who's been able to help consultants or founders of startup businesses to produce tangible results. That does not mean that they're able to do that and replicate it for you, because frankly, the dispute resolution space is a complex one. So hopefully those points make sense to you. Now, let's move forward. So what we did, and what I mentioned formed the basis of the presentation today, is we asked our 300 plus members of our free community what common business development challenges they face. So you can see here, John, he's in ADR space, just like all of you on the call here today, and asked, what, if any, challenges are you facing with obtaining more business? And his response, doing exactly that, is very challenging on a paid basis, but very easy on a voluntary basis. And I think that's quite common. It's easier to get voluntary work. It's harder to get paid work. So looking at these 300 answers, we saw a pattern. There are a lot of questions, a lot of responses to these questions that are similar. And I'll get to all of that in a moment. But before doing so, let's just take a step back and look at this more holistically, because we talk so often about how to get more cases, how to make more money, how to get more clients, and that's obviously what we're going to talk about here today. But underneath the surface, there's always going to be other drivers, maybe the real drivers. So think a little bit about what it is that you want to achieve. Is it to leave your day job? Is it to start your own practice, grow your practice? Do you want to be location independent? Do you want to change the nature of your practice? Or do you want to create an income stream for retirement? Or is it something else? Do you want to be more visible? Do you want to become a thought leader in your space? What is it that's important for you? And I'll give you an example here. One of our clients, John, started working with him about 3 years ago. So he was based in a metropolitan US city, and he had a number of goals. One of them was that he wanted to move to a small town. He wanted to leave that relatively big city. He wanted to move out to the US East Coast, and he wanted to live a more quiet and relaxed life with his wife. Another goal that he had was to buy a plot of land close to where his daughter lives in Arizona. And he had one final goal, and that was to perhaps spend a little bit more time on a sailing boat, perhaps even working from that sailing boat, mediating and arbitrating. And fast forward to today, he's been able to achieve the move. So he's moved from that metropolitan city to that small town on the US East Coast. He's been able to buy a plot of land close to where his daughter lives, and they're now looking at building a house there. The only thing we haven't been able to achieve quite yet is the sailing boat, but I think we're getting towards that. And there is a, I don't think actually I have that example with me here in this presentation, but I've got a great testimonial from John where he says that, all of these things he's been able to achieve, but he's also been able to start working less and making more money. And I think that's an outcome we'd all probably would enjoy. So let's get back to this question, or these questions. So the 4 different questions that, and apologies, I'm getting some emails here. I just want to make sure that I don't miss anybody. But the questions that you saw, the questions that we asked our 300 free community members could be categorized into 4 different groups. First one, need to find clients and referral sources. Second, learn how to connect with prospects. Third, learn how to get more business. And fourth, find time to implement and stop procrastinating. So if we rearrange this a little bit, then we get something like this. At an overarching level, you want to learn how to get more business. And that's effectively the same thing as having a roadmap or a system. And then the other questions could probably be sequenced in the following way. Find clients and referral sources, number one. Before you do anything else, you need to be able to find them. And then learn how to connect with prospects. And after that, learn how to get more business, get business from those prospects, and perhaps even get business from existing clients. And number 5, which probably should be number 4, find time to implement and stop procrastinating. And what we've done in our flagship program, the Cultivation system, is take exactly these common questions and put it into 4 different pillars. Contact initiation, always step 1. Contact cultivation, step 2. Once you've made that initial contact, then what happens? Well, then usually a process of staying top of mind and getting to know someone starts. Once you've established a relationship, you can focus on preserving that contact and also leverage that relationship. And then finally, no system, however amazing it is, will deliver any outcome unless you implement those activities. So that's step 4. So let's get back to these questions now. We're going to walk through each of these. So the first one, need to find clients and referral sources. This is relevant if you're starting out today, but it's also relevant if you're more established, because most of us will always have to focus on cultivating new relationships in some way, shape, or form. Because things always change. You know, your referral parties, your clients may retire, they may move firm, maybe any number of different things that change. And we've worked with plenty of clients that have ended up in that situation where they've relied too much on their existing referral parties and clients, only to find themselves with a group of retired referral parties and clients. And then they're in a situation where they quickly need to start cultivating new relationships. And that's not a good position to be in. So looking at this then, need to find clients and referral sources. The first point, need to know who you service and what services you provide and to whom. Most of you will know this. I'm not going to spend time on that. But then these other points we need to cover. You need to, first of all, have commercial viability in your offer. You need to know who you're targeting, and you need to know where to find your target audiences. So the first point here, we're still on the question 1, need to find clients and referral sources. And now we're looking at commercial viability. So you need to understand your market, first of all. You know, you need to understand that you're providing a certain type of mediation arbitration service, and you're providing it to a certain audience. If you're providing something which is pretty standardized, let's say that you are you're focused on labor and employment mediation or personal injury related mediation, then those markets are pretty established. So you don't really need to think much about whether there is a market for that service. That service already exists. But if you are trying to start something, or you're trying to move into a new area or add something to your list or range of services, you always need to think about whether that is commercially viable or not. So the way you do that is really through interacting directly with the people that you're going to be providing your services to understand whether that's really something that they're interested in or not. Some words of caution here: don't try to fit your solution into places where it's not needed or doesn't fit. It's very easy, if we're very passionate about something, to assume that there must be a market for it. But never assume that unless you have unlimited time, money, and energy. You always want to make sure. And also keep an open mind to what your market is telling you, because they may be telling you, and again, this isn't so relevant if you're already established or you're working in an established field of mediation arbitration. But if you're trying to go off into an area which is less developed, it may come down to the fact that it's not possible, or it may come down to the fact that it is possible, but it's going to take time. And then you need to make up your mind on whether you want to continue down that path and just factor in the time, or whether you want to approach and entertain other types of services. A very common area here is consulting or advisory. So if you need to start invoicing, or you need to start getting some clients, it's generally going to be easier for you to provide consulting services than establish a mediation practice in a completely new field. So hopefully that makes sense. And we're moving on here towards ecosystem and target audience. So when it comes to the ecosystem and target audience, what that really revolves around is identifying all of the entities and individuals that can provide you with direct and indirect business. Once you've identified that full ecosystem, you can look closer at the target audiences. And the target audiences here are really the referral parties and the clients that you have. So again, if we stick with that personal injury mediation example, then your target audiences will generally be personal injury attorneys. It could also be insurance companies, claims adjusters. And if you start doing more than scratching the surface, start asking yourself, okay, personal injury attorneys, but which personal injury attorneys? So there's probably going to be plaintiffs and defense attorneys, and there might be other ways for you to drill down further. So doing this exercise can be really, really helpful, whether you're starting out or you're more established. In fact, if you're more established, you probably haven't asked yourself these questions for a very long time, or maybe not ever. Once you've got this list done and completed, you can prioritize. So you can say, okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus on these things first, and then I'm going to move on to something else. Please also keep in mind that your peers aren't your target audiences. It's very common to connect a lot with your peers and communicate towards your peers, but your peers are not going to be hiring you. They're not going to use your services. You want to focus on the people that actually will be using your services. If you want this worksheet and not reinvent the wheel, then join our free community and you'll get access to that for free. And again, I'll come back to where you can join that free community at the end of this presentation. So we're moving on now, still in terms of finding clients and referral parties. Now, we've identified, we made sure that you have a commercially viable offer. We've looked at your target audiences. Now we need to find where they are. Where are your target audiences? So you can start approaching them. So the first part is you'll cover this in the target audience sheet. So you'll do that mapping. And you can even do it to the level of granularity where you determine where you can find these audiences. Some suggestions. There's always generally going to be a possibility for you to approach these potential clients and referral parties, both online and offline. LinkedIn is a great place to start because you can generally identify most types of client segments and target audiences on LinkedIn. But if you want to make sure that you do relationship building in an effective way, then try to move those relationships into the real world. So if you start with a connection on LinkedIn, then hopefully there should be some opportunity in the future to maybe meet that person at a conference, or maybe you can have lunch with them. But you could also start directly with approaching people in the real world. Again, maybe you are at a conference, maybe you're at a bar association event. So any number of different venues and platforms are viable as a source of finding your audiences. And then it comes down to you how to prioritize that. Some of these sources are public, like LinkedIn, and some are non-public. It could be membership lists of organizations or bar associations, for instance. So you can utilize both the public and the non-public to find your different target audiences. So now that we've covered how you sort of get started, we move on to how to connect with prospects. So the way you connect with prospects are, first of all, by understanding how decisions are made. It's a really important point, and we're going to look at that next. Then we'll look at how you initiate contacts and then how you cultivate those relationships. So, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, the mediation arbitration ecosystem is a very complex one, because generally you will be in a situation where you don't only have to focus on trying to get one single person or entity on board with using your services. There's always going to be at least two parties for every mediation. For arbitration, could be many more, and could even be more for mediation. That means that there's going to be a lot of competition and choice. If you always have to at least be able to convert two attorneys, that means that you need to have a decent amount of visibility, reputation, and relationships. And most attorneys already know of mediators and arbitrators that they can use. Most attorneys will have colleagues or friends or peers that will know of mediators and arbitrators that they can use. So that makes it really challenging. And decisions are made based on relationships here for the most part, and reputation, and to some extent visibility. So that's number one. That's why it gets challenging. I'll tell you how decisions aren't made. They aren't made through social media postings. And it's very easy to default to this, because if we just post on social media, then we never really have to interact with any attorney, and we don't have to fear them being rude to us or saying no, or not picking up the phone or not responding to an email. If I just sit and create LinkedIn posts all day, then no one's ever going to reject me. But unfortunately, that is not how these decisions are made. They are made based on relationships for the most part. So even though visibility and social media has a role to play, it rarely has a role to play in terms of as a direct source of business. And I'll tell you a little bit more about this in a few slides. So the next step then is start initiating contact with your prospects. Like, how do you do that? Well, first of all, you need to decide where and how to approach. Is it going to be online? Is it going to be offline? Once you made that decision, you can look at what messaging are you using. If you meet someone at a conference, then maybe you want to make sure that you're asking more questions than pitching. Maybe you want to be short, keep things to the point, and not monopolize someone's time for an hour while you tell them all about your mediation practice and your background. I'm sure it's super interesting, and there might be a time and place for it, but rarely is it the first meeting. And if you're connecting with someone on LinkedIn, then you're probably going to have to use different type of messaging and narrative. In general, these 2 points are applicable to everything that you do. You need to have structure in how you do it. If you do it in an ad hoc fashion, it's going to be pretty difficult to convert people. You also need to have patience, because doing this generally takes some time when it comes to new contacts. Relationships aren't created overnight. So having a structure in terms of how you approach it, a system, is going to be greatly helpful for you, because you don't need to second guess what you're doing. And in general, scale matters. So if you approach 100 people, you're probably going to end up with more clients and referral parties compared to if you only approach 5. And I'll share some examples now of successful stories, successful use cases of clients that have been able to connect and obtain a desired outcome pretty quickly, sometimes very quickly. So here's one client, and I'm sort of highlighted what she did. So she connected with attorneys in her area via physical mail, actually, good old-fashioned mail, and she was able to secure a case that way. And not long after she posted this, and these are all use cases coming from our client community, our private client community. So after this, it was just 4 days after, she posted again, and then she had been able to secure 2 very hot opportunities using LinkedIn. So LinkedIn definitely works for getting business. Here's another example of that. One of our clients got 3 mediations booked within 30 days from a completely new client and a completely new relationship, an attorney via LinkedIn. So he connected with this attorney on LinkedIn. They had a bit of an interaction, and within 30 days, he had 3 mediations booked. And what you'll see here, which is blurred, unfortunately, is his story, him telling it himself. Here's another example of one of our clients that saw an attorney's post on LinkedIn, and he reached out via email to that attorney with a pretty cool hook to that message that was relating back to the original post on LinkedIn that that attorney had done. And they had an exchange via email, which led to my client obtaining mediation on the back of it. Again, an example here of a client that obtained 2 mediations booked from a new attorney contact. Originally, I believe they connected via LinkedIn. She stayed in touch and was able to obtain this outcome. And I think this is the final example. Again, one of our clients shared this in our community, how she was able to generate new business straight from LinkedIn. There's quite a lot of LinkedIn examples here. I think that also goes back to the fact that we've just started getting out more, but equally as effective if you're able to meet people in person, and probably even more effective. It's just that scaling part that's a little bit challenging when you're interacting in person. I got the question from a client a while back. She asked me, Dan, what is it that determines success? Like if someone's trying to get more business, what is it that makes them successful? And what is it that makes someone not successful? I think the first question, the first point to be made here is whether they have existing clients or referral parties or not. If someone has an existing network, then generally that's a great resource for obtaining more business and more new business. If someone only focuses on new client generation, then it will take more time because we're creating the relationships. And it really comes down to obviously using the right system and the right approach. Then it's only a question of time. But I think this is important, having the right attitude. And the easiest way of describing that, I think, is to have a can-do attitude. Find ways of consistently improving rather than sit and ask yourself questions around why this isn't working. Don't spend energy on why it isn't working. Spend energy focusing on what you can do to improve and do more of and do less of. So now we're getting to the contact cultivation space. We're still at the connect with prospects segment. So when it comes to cultivating relationships, and I can't stress this enough, almost no one does this. And if someone does it, they usually don't do it in a structured way. So having that focus on how you bring a relationship from the early stages to someone that talks about you and mentions your name, it tends to just kind of happen for some people over time. But how can we make it happen with more people? And how can we make it happen more quickly with the people that we're already doing well with? It really comes down to time and consistent effort. That really is what cultivation is all about. You want to make sure that you stay top of mind. The best way of staying top of mind is through having an omni-channel communication and presence. You're not only posting content on LinkedIn, you're doing other things, both directly and indirectly towards these individuals that you're trying to cultivate relationships with. And within this space, visibility does play a role. The mindset that you should have here is not overly focusing on the people where you think that there is a hot lead or opportunity. Like in general, when it comes to sales, you're only able to convert maybe 1 out of 100 people, depends on business that you're in. But what tends to happen is that people focus so much on this individual. Let me try to get business from him or her. But there's 99 others here that if you just focused on cultivating these relationships, you probably would be able to convert a decent amount of them. So that's really what you want to do. You still want to keep focusing on the one, but you also want to make sure that you capture the 99. If you do, then you're going to be able to get the low-hanging fruit, but you're also going to be able to get some of that business which you probably would never have gotten had you not had this type of approach. So I've talked about visibility. What is visibility? Well, visibility generally plays a supporting effort. Visibility is essentially us being visible or communicating on and offline. It could be us posting on our blog. It could be us posting on social media. It could be us speaking at an event. It could be us hosting a webinar. It could be any number of different things. You being on radio or TV. For most people, that is not a direct driver of business. It's a supporting effort. And we tend to suggest approaching it as such, at least initially, because it's really the path of least resistance. If you focus more on relationship building in your network, then generally you're going to get results quicker. And this will help you. It doesn't require a lot. You don't have to post every day on social media, 1 to 2, let's say you're posting once per week or once every second week. It's generally sufficient. So you just want to keep up the consistency. And not only use one channel, you can use the same content on multiple channels. And always keep in mind that you're not only producing for your audience, because people will think, why am I not getting more LinkedIn likes and comments and shares? It's so frustrating. I'm putting so much effort into it. Well, perhaps you're putting too much effort into what you're doing. And perhaps your expectation should not be to get that many likes and comments, because you are producing for others. Because naturally you want your target audiences, your potential clients or referral parties to see what you're doing. But you're also producing for yourself, because you're going to become a better communicator by practicing. You're going to start becoming better at conveying the right messaging to your target audiences, the one that resonates. And you're also producing to repurpose. So if you're teaching at the university, then maybe you have a full lecture that spans a number of weeks. Well, you can cut that up into a number of different pieces and start posting on your blog, or maybe you repurpose it to a book. And equally, all of your LinkedIn posts over the past 6 months can become a number of chapters in your book, or it could be a number of articles that you're also posting on LinkedIn or on your blog. So there are many different reasons for why you produce content. But having said that, because some people are going to say, well, Dan, surely you can get business from visibility. And you're absolutely right. If you're good at it, if you're a rock star, you will. And what we also see is if people have international practices, or they have very specific segments and niche areas that they're operating in, visibility can produce tangible results. It can be a direct driver for business. But you always want to make sure that you approach this. You start off here, and then you start looking at this. And don't use this as an excuse for cultivating direct relationships with your target audiences. Don't fall back on that. But just to give you some inspiration, here are 2 examples of clients that have gotten business from LinkedIn. I realize that time is ticking here, so I'll make sure that I keep up the pace. Hopefully it's not too quick. The first example here is of one of our clients who just simply posted on LinkedIn, and she's actually telling the story here on one of our group calls. So she posted on LinkedIn. A potential client got in touch and ended up becoming a client on the back of it. The other example, also told by one of our clients here on the same group call, she had posted on LinkedIn. An attorney reached out and complimented her on the content, and they had an exchange. And this wasn't immediate. They ended up staying in touch for a period of time. But during our group call here some time ago, she had effectively just completed an arbitration for that attorney contact. So it does happen. But if you have the right mindset, again, and the expectation that it won't happen all the time or very frequently, then you're not going to get disappointed, and you're going to be able to pick up the business whenever you can. So now we get to how to get more business. And getting more business can be done, I mentioned this a few slides back, can be done through new contacts and existing contacts. If you have existing clients or referral parties, that's where you want to start. And the number one message I can give you, the number one advice is just stay in touch. Simple as that. Whether it was a year ago or 20 years ago, get in touch now, stay in touch. And don't get complacent when you get busy or you lose motivation. Just keep it up. Contact cultivation is not something that generally is a quick fix. And the work that you put in today will pay off dividends, a lot of dividends in the future. And I'll give you some examples here of how this works when you have an existing network. So you can see again here, this is coming from our client community, and I've got this summary of what it revolved around. So existing network, staying in touch. So you have one of our clients who implemented one of our activities, and he booked 7 new mediations within 24 hours on the back of it. I'm not trying to tell you that this should be your expectation, because it is quite unusual, and this really comes down to who he is and what he does and the network that he has. But that's just the power of doing things and doing things the right way. Another example here from one of our clients who sort of fallen off the wagon a little bit with business development. And we had a chat, her and I gave her some pointers on how to start actioning some of these things. And again, here she's telling the story on one of our group calls of spending about a week implementing those activities. And she was booked out within a couple of weeks from that with back-to-back business. So it's never too late to implement. And even if you've fallen off the wagon with your marketing and business development, you can still get back to it and you can still produce great outcome. Now I'm going to share some pretty fantastic and extraordinary results that our clients have been getting. The first one here is, and you can see our conversation. I asked one of our clients how much working with us has generated, the results over the past 3 years in his case. So he started off with about $300,000 annually, and he will be over $700,000 this year with his mediation arbitration practice. And this all comes down to, this is the use case that I wanted to share with you. So I'll say a few more words about it shortly, but it really comes down to just taking care of your existing clients. This gentleman is quite busy, and you just want to make sure that you nurture and you leverage your existing relationships. Here's another example of a client, same thing, asked him, what have the results been? In his case, he started off with about $250,000 annually in 2020, and he's on track now based on pipeline and progress to likely make over $750,000 this year, doing exactly the same thing in terms of business development as the gentleman that I showed you on the previous slide. And here's yet another example. Actually, was someone who joined the program a year ago, and then she kind of disappeared for a number of months. And when she rejoined our group call, we asked her, so, what happened? What did you do? And she joined the program. She implemented some of the activities, and she got so busy that she dropped off the radar. And that's obviously amazing, but we always want to make sure that we continue with business development. So let me just say a few words here about this gentleman that went from $300,000 to $700,000. And I summarized this in our client community just a few days ago. The key points to his success is to make significant revenue, you really need to have a diversified client base, a referral party base. It's going to be difficult for you to make $700,000 plus annually if you're only reliant on a couple of clients. So you consistently need to expand that. To accelerate and grow, what you first do is take care of your existing clients, then you focus on new client cultivation. You also want to make sure that you deliver excellent results. and services. You need to be super consistent in terms of delivery of value. And the common denominator for a lot of our clients that are this successful is that they are curious, they're interested in learning more, they'd like to experiment when it comes to business development. And many of them have frankly invested in one-on-one coaching with me for a number of years. The final point, which is an important one, when you get this busy, it's very hard for you to do everything yourself. So you need to start relying on outsourcing, insourcing, automation systems and processes to help you. And I'm not only talking about business development now, I'm talking about your actual service delivery and execution, everything that's administrative on the back end. You will need to tweak and optimize if you're going to sit and do back-to-back mediations 5 days per week. Final point, find time to implement. And I'll sort of move past this quite quickly because I think we've sort of discussed it a little bit. It really comes down to identifying what you need to do yourself, key relationships. That's really something that you need to focus on. But once you get a hang of how all of this works, then you can start letting someone else in on helping you. And that way you ensure that things actually get done. And this could, for instance, be a virtual assistant. I'll skip that. And we'll also move past John, but just keep that in mind. Hopefully you thought about what is it here that you want. What do you want to achieve? What's your driver? Do you want to be on the sailing boat or you want to do something else? We'd love to have a chat about the cultivation system with you, and I'll tell you about what that is and how it works. Like I mentioned, it's structured into these 4 pillars. That's the foundation of it, but it covers so much. It is very holistic and it's very, very granular within each of these 4 pillars. So this is the cultivation system. It's based on 4 different things. First of all, an online training platform, an e-learning platform where you get access to pre-recorded content that will walk you through the system. You also get access to our client community, and I've referenced that here during the presentation today. That client community is for us to share updates in, but it's also for our clients to engage in and share what's working, what isn't working, and also get to know each other. We do regular collaboration calls, which are hosted by me. Those are generally of a Q&A nature. We're going to start doing implementation calls where we focus on key parts of the cultivation system, key parts that are really important and generally are a little bit more complex to implement. So we'll focus on one topic at a time for each of those implementation calls. And you also get access to a one-on-one strategy session with me as part of that program. If you're interested in learning more about this, then respond to any of my previous emails. That's a quick way of doing it. You can also use the link in any of the emails that you've ever received from us. There's usually a link to our website, or you can respond to those emails too, obviously. You can go to our website, performancelaws.com, don't forget the S, and schedule a free consultation call. We prefer to schedule these consultation calls before someone signs up because we just want to make sure that you're a right fit for the program and that you're going to be able to digest and put all of that content to work and get the outcome that you want. So we'd love to have you here in our client community. There's a lot of very friendly people here. Everybody's interested in getting great outcomes. We do meet online, but sometimes we meet in person. This is my home-built Photoshop. I had one client that I actually met up with in London, and we had such a good time. We weren't actually in the pub, but I thought, if it's London, let's do a pub photo. But I forgot to take a selfie, so here it is. Now, there's no obligation for you to sign up for a paid-for program. We provide a lot of free content, YouTube channel, articles, LinkedIn, webinar recordings, the works. And we'd love for you to take full advantage of that. The easiest way of getting access to everything is to go to our website, performancelaws.com, click free group, And then you'll join our community. Looks like this. We're over 300 people now. And in this community, you'll have everything. You'll have a completely free training program. You get advice on how to set up your LinkedIn profile, previous webinar recordings. So there's a lot of different things here that you could just tap into. You can obviously interact with the other people that are part of this community too. And this is the free program that I referenced. So if you want to join the free program, do that. If you're interested in the Cultivation System program, get in touch. I'd love to have a chat with you. Please remember, there's only 5 months left of the year, so we're almost a year end. So if you're looking to get results and produce results, then now is really the time to start actioning that. And I think that takes us to the end.